Hi everyone, Brad Drew here. I want to share with you today some things that I've learned about the new Topaz Mask AI product. It's really remarkable for creating a mask in an easy way. They've added some features to it that allow some automatic things to happen that make it just even easier than it was before. Um, what I'm going to share with you today is how to mask this car and add a background like the one I have here, or even a texture. Um, I'm going to be using this in Topaz Studio 2. These Mask AI also can be used as a plugin to Lightroom and Photoshop, but I am going to be using it as a plugin essentially to the Topaz Studio editor. So let me go ahead and switch to that right now. Um, Here is Topaz Studio 2. This is what we're currently looking at. This is the car that I'm talking about, and this is actually an iPhone image. I've already processed it to get the color the way I want and everything like that. But obviously, this background really doesn't do anything to support the beauty of this car. You'll notice that I'm using the latest version of Studio, which is version 2.1.3. I suggest you make sure that you have the latest version, and if not, make sure that you get it updated or reinstall it in order to get the latest. Because some of the features that I'm going to show you, I don't believe work with the earlier version. So again, you can also run Mask AI independently without running it through Studio or Photoshop or Lightroom. It works as an independent application from the desktop as well. I like using it in Topaz Studio because I like to drop a raw file right in here, do my standard raw processing right in Studio, and then from there go into Mask AI and finish my project. So what I'm gonna start with here, again, this image is already edited, and where you find Mask AI now, if you come over to the Add Filter button, and I'm going to switch. These are my favorites, actually. I'm going to switch over to all the filters that come with the Topaz Studio 2. You'll see all those here. And if you notice way down here at the bottom, there's a plugin section. And the plugins that I have here are AI, Denoise, Sharpen, and Mask. And these are all separate applications that you purchase independently from Studio. But once you purchase them, they can be plugged into Topaz Studio 2. So what I'm going to do is come down here to Mask AI, and I'm going to click on that, and it's going to invoke the program from within Studio 2. So here is the interface for Mask AI, and you'll notice it's come in with this red color on the top of the image. What Topaz does is use a 3-color, what they call a tri-map system. So the colors that they use are blue, green, and red. The blue is the color that would be used to define the line, like between the car and the background, that you want to lose. And that's going to be the compute line, where it's going to actually do its computation to figure out what it's going to keep and what it's going to throw away. The green would indicate the part of the image that you want to keep, and the red, the part of the image that's going to get cut. So when we look at this, I've set mine up to open up with a default color of red, the cut color. So what that means, if I come up here to Topaz Mask AI in the upper left, I can open up the preferences here, and I can set my default tri-map color to be blue, or to be blue, green, or red, and I prefer red. And I'll show you how I use it, and you could choose something different, but this is what I've come up with for myself. So I'm going to close that up. So anytime I open Mask AI with an image, it's going to bring it up with the tricolor red showing. What I'm going to do now is compute the mask. Now, one way you can do it is to select the brush and come in here and manually draw a line around the image to indicate your compute line. But one of the new features in the last upgrade with Mask AI is auto detect subject. Very cool feature. What it's going to do when I click on this, it's going to identify what it believes is the subject of the image and create the tri-map for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little human with a little lightning bolt next to it, and watch what happens. Click. And there is my mask. Now, you'll notice that it also picked up this van in the background, thinking I might want it also, and I don't. So what I'm gonna do is go over here and click the cut color, and I'm gonna go in here. I can make my brush bigger, and I am just gonna wipe that out. So it actually will cut that van out of the image as well. Now I also noticed that there's a little tiny area of the fin over here that didn't get covered by this line. So I'm going to switch to my compute brush, and I can make the brush a little smaller. And I'm just going to come in here and make sure I get that tail fin. And I'm actually going to get all of that. So now I'm ready to go ahead and compute this, this image. So you'll notice down here is the compute mask button, and there are two mask modes. One is the artificial intelligence mode, and the other is a contrast mode. The AI mode is the one I use when I'm originally computing the mask. So it's going to do the computation of everything on that blue line and create my mask. Once I switch over to tweaking this and touching it up, I want to make sure that I switch to the contrast button. The reason for that is if I leave it in AI, every time I make a little tweak to the edge, it recomputes the entire mask. I only want it to compute that one little area, so I want it to be in the contrast mode. So we'll get to that in a second. Right now, I'm going to compute this mask, and I'm going to click the compute mask button. And it's going to take about 3 to 5 seconds, depending on you know, what kind of muscle you have in your computer and processing power. So I've got a iMac desktop machine here, and it does pretty well. It's almost done. I don't know, maybe a little more than 5 seconds. There is my mask, and that was completely auto. Now you can see it's not perfect. There are some areas around the edges that I need to clean up. One of the things that's really hard is when you have a black surface like asphalt and a black tire, finding the distinction between that low contrast is really hard. But the program did a pretty decent job. What I like to do now you notice we're seeing two panels here. We can also look at all four and see each of the types of masks that you know, the different ways it presents this. What I like to do is switch to the single window and then go over and choose the keep result mask. So now what I'm looking at is my car that I want to keep, and I can see around it the areas that I need to kind of clean up. Now, it's hard to see on this grid that's there. So there are a couple things that you can do. One is you want to come over to the background button. I'm going to tap on that. And when I do, I get several different options. I can choose a blur option, or I can select the color, or I can even add an image that will go in behind the car. It could be a texture. It could be another image that you composite with this one. For the tweaking and the cleanup part, I like to do one of two things. One is to go get a color. And if I select a color here, it brings the color wheel up, and I can choose a color that is going to reveal for me the places that I need to clean up. So I want something that's going to give me some contrast from the pink. And excuse me. So this is starting to look pretty good. You can see over here, I've got some cleanup. I've got some cleanup under the bumper in the front, and a little bit of cleanup over here and on the top edge, but not a lot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the other thing that I like to do, which is go to blur. And when I go to blur, it's leaving the background in. Let me get this panel out of the way. It's leaving the, whoops, go to blur. It's leaving the background, the actual background in, but it allows me to control how much of that is, what the percentage of blur. So when I blur this, if I blur it all the way, again, it's allowing me to see the places that I need to clean up. This isn't bad. When I look at this, and you can zoom in, I'm just using the roller bar on my mouse to zoom in. And then if I want to navigate, like if I zoom really tight and I want to navigate, I'm going to use the navigation window up here to kind of guide me around this image. The other thing that you can do here, what we're going to do is go back to the masking mode. And what I'm going to do is jump back and forth between the keep brush and the cut brush. So the things I want to keep, I'm going to use the green brush. The things I want to cut, like this noise over here, I'm going to use the cut brush. And I'm going to switch back and forth. But once I get into the image, let me zoom in on this a little bit. Notice my brush is really big. Well, I can control it with this slider right here. But the other really nice shortcut is to use the bracket keys on your computer. The left bracket will make the brush smaller. The right bracket will make it larger. And right now, actually, I've got the compute brush on, which is not what I want. I'm going to switch to the cut brush, which is red. And now I can bring that brush down a little bit. And I'm going to start up and see, I forgot to switch to the contrast compute mode. Doesn't hurt anything, it just takes longer. I want to make sure when I'm doing my tweaking like this that I click on the contrast mode. And now when I click on these areas that I want to clean up, you see how much quicker it goes because it's just working on this area. And again, I can zoom in and I can use the tool to make my brush smaller. I can get into these tight places here and clean that up kind of with one click. And I'm just going down here and I'm catching all these different little areas here that need to be cleaned up. Now, this part right here is really tough because we've got black on black. It's really hard to figure that out, but I'm going to give it a try here, and it's going to do the best it can, and it's going to still require some further cleanup along the way, but this is going to get us closer. So I'm going to go in and clean this again. Sometimes I will drag the mouse, but most of the time I just tap and let it find its area. So let's just see what happens when I drag. Yeah, see, that took out way too much. And now I can go back to the green brush and start to fill some of this in. I might increase my brush a little bit. And I'm kind of coming up to what I think is the edge and letting the brush fill this in. And again, get right to the edge. And I'm going to switch back to red. So you can kind of get some back and forth going here. And clean this up. And I know that's not perfect, but let's move on just for the sake of this this tutorial. So what I'm going to do then is move around the image, and I see some places over here where it didn't get the fender well. So I'm going to get my keep brush, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go along that fender edge and fill that in. Now you can see I'm adding some noise over here, so I'm going to try and go get that. I want to make my brush a little larger using those bracket keys is a quick way to do that. And I'm just going to try and come down here and clean that out. Now you see I kind of picked up some of that that bumper down there, which I did not want to do. So I'm going to go back to my green, make it small, come in here and try and get that bumper back. And once again, I've introduced a little noise. And part of this is because I'm going so fast here. If I were going a little slower, I'd be doing better and saving time going slower, if that makes any sense. Anyway, going to move on here. I'm just going to continue around the image, and I'm in the cut mode, and I'm just cleaning up these little edges. Now here, I notice along the back, here's an area where it missed some of the car. So I'm going to use my green brush and just come in and tap along that area and see how it's filled that in. And that's pretty good. Now I'm going to come up here across the top edge, and here I see I've got some little artifacts here. I'm going to tap on those with the cut brush and eliminate those. And I'm just going to work my way across the top. Over here, I've got some little pieces here I'm going to try and get rid of. And I'm just bringing that red circle right up to the edge of what I want to keep. Now I'm going to go back to the keep brush, tap within the chrome here. I just want to make sure that I'm getting all of the that chrome filled in. And right there. Now, there is one area over here I've kind of made an executive decision about. I've worked with this little mirror quite a bit, and I've never quite been able to get it right. So I made the decision to simply remove it. So I'm gonna use my cut brush, and I just took it out. And there's some things here I want to cut. And I might make my brush a little larger again using those bracket keys on the keyboard and clean that up along that edge. And yeah, so I've left out that mirror, but I got tired of trying to get it right. So like I said, I cut it out. So now as I get down here, there's a little bit of that edge that's a little fuzzy, but that looks pretty good. Now I might get the keep brush and come back in here and just hit that edge a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. Now I can come over here, and again, I'm going to get the cut brush, just a little cleanup around here, around the headlight. And you can see how just a little tap will fix that. There's a little place here. And actually, I think I took some of the car away there, maybe. Maybe not. Might have. And so we'll fix that in a second. I'm going to zoom down in here, and there's this tight place here within, right underneath this running light. I'm going to drop my mouse down real small and get in this tight spot, and I can pretty much eradicate that. Now I'm going to go get my green brush again, expand that a little bit with those keys, and I want to fill this in where I cut out the chrome a little bit there. And there's a little piece of light over here that I missed, and I got too close to that edge, and so I'm back and forth again a little bit. Again, anytime you've got two colors that are almost the same, you're going to have this kind of back and forth a little bit. Okay, so down here, I'm going to go to the cut brush. Again, I'm going to just tap in there, and you can see I'm kind of getting that out. Drag a little bit, maybe at times. But again, most of the time, a tap is all it takes. And then here, I'm going to get my brush down real small, maybe about like that, where I can get in that corner, and I can pretty much get rid of that with one tap. And I'm just kind of working my way around the license plate here, and my way around. There's a little bit here that I want to cut. And then I want to get my green brush and just make sure that I'm getting all that license plate and that edge, and that looks pretty good. And then I'll come over here, and if we zoom out a little bit, we'll see there's this whole blacktop under the front bumper. So I'm going to get my cut brush and increase that a little bit and come in here and begin to eliminate that area. And again, we're getting over here where we've got asphalt and a black tire. So it's going to be a little tricky to get. Now here's another place where if I were to switch background again and go to color, I think I can get a better contrast, and I'm not going to have an issue with trying to mix up the tones that with low contrast. I can get that green instead, and I think I'm going to do a better job of getting my edge. So kind of going back and forth between, you've got some options when you have some challenges like this one. And then I want to go back to my mask and get my green brush and just get this area here. Anyway, I'm not going to belabor this too much. You can see what we're doing. Let me get my cut brush here again and try and get this edge and some of this. And let's see, let's try and get some of that back. So there's one other thing that I'll show you. I mean, I've yet to see a masking program that doesn't have difficulty with some of these edge issues, but there are some things that will help kind of resolve some of that. There's an edge tool that lets us kind of shrink down the edge and hide some of these really difficult edges like this. So I'm gonna come in here, and I want to get this over here. And there we go. And I might want to get that. So all that's cut. Then I'm gonna get my green brush and come back in here and get this edge of the tire. And again, I'm going back and forth here a lot. Enough of that. So now there's also some stuff back here that I would play with. I think we started there. Anyway, by switching to the color instead of the background, I've got a better I've improved my odds of getting that right. So now it's back in. So there it is. And here we've got an edge up here that we missed, and a little bit of an edge here, and a little bit maybe here, and that's looking pretty good. All right, so, well, here's a little, I could go on and on, but there we go. Okay, so that's good for this. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my background. I'm going to choose the blur option again. And now one of the options that I have for creating my background is to simply use the actual background. So there it is, full strength. And there it is as I increase the blur. But here's where you can begin to really manipulate that. If you look at all of these sliders here, you can adjust the exposure. So you could brighten that up a little bit. You can come down here to tint, and you can make it more pink to match the car. You can drop the contrast down a little bit to kind of dull up some of the background up at the top. And you can go on and on with this. I really like that. If you wanted to increase the shadows on that background a little bit, you can increase the shadows under the car. Sometimes that helps with some of those dark edges. So there is one answer to how you can create this background and make the car very figural. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do here, or the other thing we could do, is to add a texture or an image behind instead of the actual image. So I'm going to click on the image icon right here, and I'm going to upload an image. Now this image could be another photograph that you've taken that you want to combine with this one, or it could be a texture, which I love to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click upload image, and it takes you out to your Finder or your navigation tool. And I'm just going to type in textures, and it's going to route me over to where my textures are. And I have a whole collection of flypaper textures. Let's get this one that's kind of nice contrast to the pink. There it is. I'm gonna scroll down with my mouse and make this small, and I'm gonna switch over here to transform, because you'll notice the filter, the texture file isn't covering the whole image. So I'm going to expand that until it does. There it is. It's filling the whole image. And now I want to, well, while I'm here, the other thing I can do, you notice there's a flip vertical and a flip horizontal. I can actually flip that texture by clicking these buttons. See how I'm switching it around? That's kind of a nice angle there. I can switch it again and move it that way. I can put the white kind of down below, or I can flip it vertical again and put it over here on this side. So I kind of like it like that. Let's leave it like that. I'm going to click transform again, and oops, now I'm back into the tri-map that doesn't help me much. So I'm going to go up here and choose keep. And now I'm seeing this view. I can scroll in. And by the way, at any time you want, you can go back into the mask mode by clicking here, and you can go in here and work on fine-tuning some of the places that might still be showing up with your new texture behind your image. You can always do that. So I'm going to go back to background and transform, and I can begin to adjust in the background here all of these things. So if I want to blur that background a little bit, if I want to change the tint so that I can make it a little more pink, I can do that. I can saturate that or desaturate that, I guess, to get that green out of there. And now I'm kind of getting a complementary pink going on. I can drop my exposure or increase it to brighten things. A whole bunch of stuff. I can drop the contrast down, and now I have an image on a background that's suitable for the color of the subject. The other thing I didn't mention here that you have the ability to do, if you go to the edge tool here in the center, You notice you can adjust things like the hardness of the edge, the strength of the edge, but the one thing that's really helpful here is the edge shift. Notice if I increase the edge shift, you see how I'm adding kind of increasing the edge around the car, not the look we want. But if I take this and reduce it, now I'm kind of shrinking that edge to fit the car more. So places where there is maybe a little bit of softness, it's now tightening it up and it begins to look much better. And you can also, depending on the image, sometimes foreground recovery will help with that also. The edge hardness, you can adjust that a little bit as well, and it can kind of help with some of that. And then again, once you do this, you might see places that emerge that you want to touch up. So I can go back into mask, I can choose my cut brush, and I can come down here and play with some of these little areas here that are still problematic. You can do that right up until the time you save your image. And those little things may emerge as you make these kinds of adjustments. So there's a little bit of the corner of the car that I'd missed before. So I'm going to put it back. And so now I've got too much. So again, you can go down a rabbit hole with this. The other thing you can do is sometimes choose, let's go back to background, choose a background and adjust it in such a way that it also helps hide some of those imperfections in your map. But so by maybe darkening the map like this, possibly adjusting your contrast of the map, all those things, you can begin to hide some of the blemishes that might not otherwise show up. Okay, that is it. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and click apply. I'm ready. I'm still in Mask AI, but remember we launched from Topaz Studio 2. So now I'm going to apply this mask, clicking right here, and it's going to take me back. Well, first I have an option. It's going to ask me how I want to save it. I can save the transparency of this or the composite. When I'm working in Studio 2, I always choose the composite. If you're doing this in Photoshop or even in Mask AI from the desktop on its own as a standalone, you'll have some other options here, such as saving a PNG file of the mask and other things. And if you do it in Photoshop, you will save those out as a layer in Photoshop, and it will allow you to have even more options once you get it in Photoshop. I'm going to choose composite, and now there it is. It's round tripped me back into Studio 2. You can see up here, and there's our image. Now, if I wanted to, I can continue to edit this image. I can't edit the background and the foreground separately, but if I wanted, say, to add a vignette to this image, I could come in here, drop my transition so I can see that, maybe round the image or the vignette a little bit, manipulate the size, and then the strength so that it's very, very subtle, not much different from the rest, and then bring my transition up, and now I've hid the line, and now I have this really sweet vignette around this car and kind of a nice background that picks up the purple and the pink as complementary colors. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and save this image. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the File menu here, and you have two options normally when you save a TS2 file, a Topaz Studio 2 file. One is to save this as a project. When you do that, it's going to create a TS2 file, a Topaz file. It's kind of like a PSD file if you're working in Photoshop. When you save a TS2 file or a PSD file, it's going to save all of your layers and allow you to go back in and adjust those layers and work with them later. The one thing to remember is that when you are saving as a TS2 file, a project, I've been having some issues with Mask AI when I have a Mask AI layer in here. And honestly, I don't know if it's a bug I've discovered or if it's not intended to work this way when I save a TS2 file. So I'm working with Topaz support right now to try and understand if this is not intended to work this way or if there is indeed a bug that they will fix eventually. So for right now, what I recommend is simply exporting the image, not save it as a project TS2 file. So I'm going to click export. And when I do, it's going to allow me to name the file. I can choose a format of JPEG, TIFF, or PNG. I can choose a path. In this case, I'm going to just save it back to where I got it. I can adjust the quality, which I always leave at 10. And then you can also choose a color profile. I'm going to hit export, and oh, it's telling me I already have a file out there of this name because I worked on this before. I'll go ahead and say yes. And now there's my image. So let me just show you just a couple things before I go of some other, let's see, some other cars. So there's the car that we just worked on. And then here's another image. This is an image of a giraffe. I did the background. Again, it was just sort of a bald sky and some junk down here in the foreground that didn't work for me. So I masked out the background. In this case, I brought in a texture, one of my Topaz textures, blurred it to a great deal, and there's my image. Kind of cool. Here's another one that I did. Whoops, that was it. Here's another one I did with two zebras that, again, they were in a background, wasn't great. There were other zebras in the background and just some dirt and some unpleasant background. So I masked this out and created the image that you see here. Another one that I did recently was this rhino. Again, the background was uninteresting and a little cluttered. I added a texture, blurred it, and created a more complementary background to the subject. So that is it. That's what I wanted to share with you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to remind you also that I am a Topaz affiliate, which means I can offer you a discount code of 15%. That'll get you 15% on all of the products that Topaz offers. To do that, the best thing to do is to go out to my website. Let me just show you what this looks like. Here we go. Let's see. And let me grab it here and just show you where you can find this. It's pretty straightforward. This is my website. It's raddrewphotography.com. And right here on my page, you'll see a link that will take you out to Topaz. And then if you use my code of RAD15 at checkout, you'll get a 15% discount applied. And that will apply to even sale items. So if there's something on sale already, you'll get another 15% on top of that. Please do use my link here. Without that, it doesn't work the same way. So I would like you to use this link and the code, and you'll get your discount. And I earn a small commission as well. So again, thank you for being here. Look forward to some webinars, other webinars that I'll be doing on Topaz products in the future. And thanks again for being here. Until next time, so long.